Most of my questions have an intention. They're not idle by any stretch of the imagination. With your prompting, Kay, I'm sure I can explicate that. Those intentions have become implicit. They are. I don't have to stop and think about them. They're up my proverbial sleeve. And of course, for beginners, you have to put them up your sleeve, and maybe every so often reach up your sleeve to procure them when the time comes or there is a need. Narrative therapy has always had a great affinity with the subjunctive, what might be, rather than what has been. What could be, or what could have been, are the questions that narrative therapy asks, rather than what has been.
It seems to me that as a therapist, and I particularly notice this with your work, of course, that you enter into a way of thinking and speaking which seems to come from a world other than the world of the problem. It's almost as if you were stepping ahead into another world and then showing the way for people to follow you away from the world of the problem. This is a moral commitment to meet people outside of what you and Michael used to call pathologizing versions of themselves.
Yes, absolutely. I try to meet a person as one of a kind, in terms of their extraordinariness.
It's a way of thinking and being and believing about people. There's an artistry that you bring. There's an artistry in all of your interviews. It's about therapy as art. It's about you as an artist. It's about the mystery of that, what's unseen. It's about creativity.
I think I'll go back to Michael's conversation with Salvador Minuchin. He made a distinction between, and out of his interest in jazz, but he made a distinction between learning the scales, which he said required rigor and commitment, to then learning how to improvise, which he said requires an equal amount of rigor and commitment. Also, it requires a courage and audacity derived from skill. And the idea of a conversation, I really don't think the word interview is appropriate to narrative therapy. My idea of a conversation is the meeting of two minds that when they meet, they innovate. They produce something that didn't exist before the conversation. Michael put it so well. He said, we get fascinated with people, and they then get fascinated with themselves. It is very, very pleasurable experience to be in this creative conversation. One where you know something is going to happen, but you don't know what it is. That these endless possibilities of that are in front of you, and it's just a matter of time before you wander into this prospect. When people responded to me like, what was a good question? What they meant by that, something would be revealed through this conversation. Something was going to happen. There was this strong sensation that around the next corner, or we would find something of merit, value, of fantastic interest, something otherwise, something that hadn't happened before.
I think what you've set out for us here is that the context for these conversations is this promise of who somebody could be, or who somebody is that is not apparent to them, but who they already are, that is not within their view, largely because of the influence of the problem. And the way in which you ask questions has this progression where everything is built upon everything else. I call those knitting questions. Questions invite people, they invite people to become fascinated with their own answers. The questions have so much intrigue. And then the questions invite people to give detailed, storied answers. And from that, the story takes shape. You're not leading in people into a story, you're leading people into storying.
There is a video, a recent plenary I did, an interview, and she's 10 years old, and she's had about 8 treatments and hospitalizations, and she'd been declared to have a chronic problem of soiling for life. And after one session, she stopped soiling. And I interview her 6 months later, and what she says, so, out of the mouths of relative babes, she said, everyone else treated me like a patient. You treated me like a person. And when you did that, I knew I could solve this problem. I'm hoping that this course will teach people the art of inquiry rather than some implicit manual. Does the question impoverish the person or enrich the person? No question is neutral. No question is neutral. It has an effect.